I discovered the terrifying truth behind a cursed fortune that left my family starving. I never should have opened that door. It loomed there, ancient and foreboding, like a gaping maw. My hands trembled when I reached for the handle. What secrets lay beyond? My life was predictable. I woke up, went to work, came home. The routine never changed. Until that evening. The familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath my feet filled the silence, offering a false sense of comfort. The air in the room was thick and stale, smelling of dust and betrayal. Shadows danced in the corners, taunting me with whispers of what once was. I felt a chill on my neck, a prickling sensation that made my heart race. I glanced around, but the house was empty. Or so I thought. That's when I heard a soft, almost inaudible whisper curling through the shadows. It was a voice, familiar yet foreign, calling to me. Come closer. An eerie shudder coursed through me. The chill intensified, gripping my chest like a vice. Something shifted in the room, a shadow moving where there should be none. My breath caught in my throat. I was frozen. Was it my imagination? Or was something watching me? I inched toward the door, compelled by a force I didn't understand. My hands were clammy against the wood, my pulse a frantic drum echoing in my ears. The whispered call became a desperate plea. Open the door. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a movement. A figure, cloaked in darkness, slipped into view and vanished into thin air. A scream rose in my throat, but I choked it down. I couldn't move. My heart thudded, the silence amplifying the dread. The shadows twisted as if alive. I fumbled with the knob. It felt hot, burning against my skin. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Prepare yourself. Each syllable wrapped around me, pulling me closer to the unknown. I felt the world around me start to twist. Suddenly, there was a crash. My breath hitched as I stumbled back. The door flung open, revealing a void so dark it felt like it was absorbing all light. A hand, one pale, cold hand, reached out from the darkness, frozen mid-air. I was paralyzed by fear, and then, everything fell silent. The whispers stopped, leaving behind an overwhelming stillness. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My heart raced as the thud of the door echoed in my ears. Trapped. The only escape was the very void that had drawn me in with its whispering allure. I was locked in a pocket of air, thick with tension, and all that remained was the sound of my ragged breath. Desperately, I banged on the door, each impact reverberating through my body. But it was no use. It was solid, impenetrable. My thoughts raced. What was beyond this insidious threshold? Was it my family I was debasing by entering this cursed space? The air grew heavier, and with it rose a suffocating sense of despair. Then I saw them, the shadows, the figures emerging from the corners of the room, flickering like candle flames. They twisted and elongated, their forms indistinct yet oppressive. I could make out faces, but they were contorted into expressions of anguish, a mirror of my own fear. Were they trapped here too? Were they waiting for something, or someone, to release them? Suddenly, the whispers returned, angry, jagged. You shouldn't have come, they hissed, slithering through the air like bitter smoke. You will pay for your curiosity. My stomach churned as a sense of futility washed over me. They weren't just voices, they were accusations, a desolate plea for sure deliverance. I glanced around the dimly lit room, frantic for an exit or a clue that could free me. My eyes landed on a rickety table bearing an antique mirror, its surface clouded and cracked. As I approached, my reflection wavered, altering with each flicker of the feeble light. No longer was I staring back at myself but at an array of twisted and horrified faces reflecting my own terror. "Help us," they all seemed to cry in unison, their mouths forming silent words, their eyes filled with hopelessness. I could feel their pain resonating through the glass, a ghastly echo piercing the veil of reality. They seemed to plead for acknowledgement, for someone to hear their plight, and instinctively I reached toward the mirror. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold surface, a bolt of ice shot through my arm and radiated through me. The world around me shifted violently, the room morphing into a haze of darkness and light. Shadows bled from the corners, weaving into the fabric of my reality, and I found myself tumbling into the mirror's depths, a thunderous cacophony of wails echoing in my mind that I landed in a barren landscape of shattered glass and distorted voices, a realm that pulsed with an unnatural energy. And then I saw a towering structure, a house identical to the one I had just fled, but twisted and wrong, each corner bending at grotesque angles. There were no doors here, only windowless openings that gaped like mouths. As I stepped forward, the flurry of shadows surrounded me, swirling like an angry storm. "You came here to uncover the truth," they roared, their voices crashing against each other, forming a storm of dissonance. "But truth is a curse, it bleeds despair." I staggered back, but the shadows swarmed, drawing closer, cooler than night itself. "You will suffer our fate," they screeched, a symphony of anguish enveloping me. Panic surged through my veins as I turned to run, darting toward the house, desperate to escape the thrumming shadows that pursued me, but when I reached the threshold, the air shimmered. A barrier of darkness pulsed before me like a heartbeat, flickering with ominous energy. I was stuck, suspended between two realities, a puppeteer's marionette with no strings to pull. "Open the door." They screamed in unison, an accusing echo that seemed to seep deeper into my bones. "Release us, and you will be free." I hesitated, torn between terror and the pull of the unknown. Just as I mastered the resolve to break through, I felt a hand on my shoulder, a cold, clammy grip that spiraled down my spine with dread. I spun around, heart pounding, to face the most haunting sight of Almy Mother, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched in a grim smile that didn't reach her sunken gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "It's time to come home." I could scarcely breathe. My mother, or the specter of her, stood before me, a dismal caricature of the woman I had once loved. I stumbled back, instinct gripped me like a vice run. But my legs felt weighted, shackled by the depths of grief and horror. "Mom?" My voice wavered, threading through the oppressive air. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm. "Is it really you?" But deep inside, I knew the answer, knew that the woman before me was not the mother I remembered. This was something twisted and corrupted, a marionette draped with the tattered remnants of her form. The shadows seemed to retreat slightly, coiling back as though they too were repulsed. "You need to understand," she said softly, her voice echoing, weaving an intimate tapestry of dread. "Your family was bound to this curse. It festers, it devours. You wanted to know what happened to us, didn't you?" A grin split her face, wide and hollow, her teeth jagged and cruel. I recoiled, horrified. "What curse? What happened to you?" "Ah, child." Her sickly sweet tone twisted with malice. "It all began with a hidden fortune, one that promised abundance. But wealth is deceitful, it feeds on human despair." She gestured toward the infinite abyss surrounding me, and within the shadows, faces blinked into existence, each marked with sorrow, bathed in the agony of longing, their mouths moving in silent screams. A surge of memories crashed over me, nights spent in restless sleep as a child, whispering voices, the creeping sense of dread that had invaded our family home. The strange occurrences, the whispers of hidden treasure, the insidious promises that had ensnared my family's heart like vines choking a desperate tree. "They dug too deep," she continued, her eyes narrowing into slits that sparked with malignant fire. "Their greed opened a door they could not close, a portal to despair and loss. I had to follow them." "Follow them where?" I all but shouted, the weight of her despair crashing down upon me like a physical blow. "To the heart of darkness," she said. to a fate far worse than death. They wanted to reclaim what they had lost, but in their pursuit, they traded their souls. An icy dread pooled in my stomach as her words settled in. I was not just trapped in this realm, I was heir to a horror that I couldn't begin to comprehend. You wanted me to come here, I whispered, a horrified realization dawning on me. Her horrendous smile tightened further. You have a choice, my love. You can join us, safeguard our legacy, or push through this shadow and bear witness to our torment. The shadows writhed, their grasp sharpening, excitement brewing in the air as they awaited my response. Join us, be with your family, share in our fate, they murmured, the shift of their voices weaving together, a cacophony of temptation. I turned back to the house, its grotesque visage now pulsating with eager hunger. Somewhere deep inside, the very essence of dread coiled tighter, expanding into a singular thought: my family was down this road, in a space hidden and terrible, waiting for release or perhaps for someone to willingly take their place. No, I gasped, shaking my head, retreating from the pitiful figure that wore my mother's face. I won't fall into this darkness, and as I took a step back, the shadows surged, a ravenous tide lurching forward. It was a race against the darkness consuming me as I pounded at the barrier, but it did not budge. What will you choose? The darkness growled, its voice deeper now, reverberating off the ground like a thunderclap. Your mother, freedom, or the doom of your family to haunt this eternity? Just as my resolve began to crumble, the shadows collapsed inward around me, something prickling against the nape of my neck, a sensation that I was not entirely alone. A guttural growl erupted nearby, shaking the very fabric of this forsaken realm. Then I understood, it was not just my mother looking to ensnare me. Something darker lurked within these shadows, a presence older than death itself, awakening, and it didn't want to be denied. With a scream lodged in my throat, I turned back to face the house and saw something emerge from the darkness, a figure, tall and blackened, its eyes glinting like polished obsidian, reaching toward me with outstretched hands. You will discover the truth, it hissed, and in that moment, everything went black. The suffocating void of darkness enveloped me, and I held my breath, the silence pressing heavily on my chest. Moments felt like hours as my senses struggled to find footing in this dismal nothingness, a swirling abyss threatening to swallow me whole. Panic clawed at my throat, a wild animal desperate for freedom, but I felt paralyzed, chained by unseen forces that whispered sweet promises of power and eternal belonging in exchange for my tether to the living. Suddenly, the acrid tang of charred wood and something foul, something that stank of musty decay, hit me like a slap to the face. My eyes adjusted slowly to the smothering dark, revealing the remnants of the family home I had always known. Yet this space was twisted, as if seen through a warped lens. The moldy wallpaper peeled back to expose rotten timbers, and the deep cracked, spidery floorboards creaked ominously beneath my feet, echoing a brooding symphony of despair. I dared to take a step forward, and then another, my heart thudding in sync with the clamorous creaks that surrounded me, a chorus of memories long forgotten. An unsettling noise came from just beyond my line of sight, tickling my curiosity, a low, gurgling laugh, stretched thin over layers of sorrow. It slithered through the air like a sickly mist, wrapping around me and tightening. Come closer, it called, echoing my mother's voice, ensuring my mind circled back to the horror I had just faced. Come see what lies beneath, what you were meant to find. My legs moved as if guided by a force beyond my control, dragging me further into the depths of this hellish facade. With every step, the air thickened until it became nearly suffocating, each breath tasting strongly of bitterness and despair. The shadows danced around me, flickering as if in anticipation, while half-formed figures flickered in and out of sight, their sunken eyes watching with gleeful malice. That I found myself led to the living room, once a sanctuary, now a wretched stage for unseen horrors. A grand mirror stood on the wall, its frame ornate yet corroded, containing a hazy reflection of the room swirling with dim light. In the glass, I saw not just my own ghostly visage but figures behind me, emerging from corners that had been swallowed by the dark. Their faces were etched with suffering, eyes hollow pits of despair, yet their mouths moved in synchrony, mouthing words that I could not hear. You must remember, you must see. Their voices were a chilling lament, tearing at the seams of my sanity. It began with the search, the insatiable greed. I stumbled back from the mirror, terror flooding through me. I had seen those eyes, me family. Yes, the faces transformed through agony into creatures of torment, something monstrous and primordial, forever clawing at the edges of their confinement. Yet, something else lurked in the depths of the mirror, more than just desperate souls. In a crack of clarity, the truth darted through the murky fog of despair. What I had thought was my family was merely a reflection of their corruption. My heartbeat quickened, pounding against my ribs as dread twisted tighter around my throat. They were not seeking to reclaim, they were waiting. "Join us, so we can escape too," they whispered in unison, their limp bodies undulating in a gruesome ballet, urging me to come closer to the mirror and the promise it held. The blackened figure from before surged back into my consciousness, a chilling reminder of what waited with open arms, craving my surrender. "You will face the truth, whether in life or death," it grinned, its voice sultry and dripping with grave intent. With a sudden rush of defiance, I flung my arms wide, even as the air thickened around me. "I will not pledge myself to this curse," I shouted, feeling my lungs resonate with desperation. I turned, desperate to break free from this sickening trap, but the walls closed in around me, suffocating, and I was plunged again into pitch darkness. But then a light flickered behind my eyelids, the iridescent glimmer of something not wholly unwelcoming. I hesitated and allowed the glow of hope to guide me. I opened my eyes, and I saw a door, almost translucent with a golden sheen. It swung open, revealing a world that pulsed with color, a tantalizing escape from the horror I had faced. But even as I took my first step toward it, laughter echoed in my ears, and my heart sank. Shadows pooled at the edges, churning with violent fury, coming together, forming into sudden shapes, their features sharpening and contorting into faces I recognized. How they twisted into harrowing expressions of betrayal and fury, my own family, reaching out, not in welcome, but to pull me back to the darkness that had claimed them. "Don't leave us!" they screamed, the cacophony splintering into 1,000 cries that clawed at my sanity. "Join us, let us share the burden," and in that moment, as they lunged forward with hollow eyes filled with eternal hunger, I was faced with the undeniable horror: the choice would always be mine. And it was suffocatingly clear, I was not just battling against a curse, I was the final piece in a macabre puzzle that threatened to bind me forever in the shadows of my family's despair. But the door flickered tantalizingly behind me and I felt my heart falter. What path would I choose? As the faces twisted into despairing masks of regret and pain, the world around me spiraled toward darkness once more, and I could feel the walls beginning to close in, each heartbeat echoing the dreadful decision I had yet to make. Would I join them in their eternal anguish? Or would I flee into the uncertain light, knowing that something even more malignant may await on the other side? And then, just as I reached out for the door, a rasping whisper clawed through the air, shattering my thoughts: "The truth will be revealed only in blood." The world shifted, and before I could process, the door slammed shut, sealing me among the shadows, the suffocating darkness thickening like a blanket of despair, leaving me, once again, unbearably alone. The darkness closed around me, pressing in until I could barely even breathe. I staggered backward, my palms flat against the rotting wooden wall, as the weight of despair shifted, coiling tightly around my chest like a serpent. My vision wavered, distorted by the clouds of panic layering within me. The laughter, that demented laughter, hummed through the air, vibrating through my bones, as if a leering crowd of wraiths danced in the shadows just out of reach. They beckoned to me, encouraging my collapse into the brooding abyss. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing fervently that I could disappear, that I could erase the family I once loved from my mind, their faces now etched in torment. "Let go," they urged, their voices layered like a choir of the damned. "Embrace the darkness," but beneath their pallid faces and skeletal frames lay the remnants of their former selves, the shadows of love twisted by insatiable greed and the horrors of what truly lay beneath the surface of our family's so-called fortune. A cold sweat slicked my skin, and with that realization came a violent shudder through my body. All around me, whispering shadows shifted, eagerly watching me grapple with the grotesque revelations that I could not remain a prisoner in this hell, chained to their malice. Summoning the remnants of my will, I began to move deeper into the unrelenting darkness, desperate to escape the echoes of their sinister calls. Yet the air around me shimmered with malice, pulsing like a living thing, alive with tortured whispers that flooded my mind with fragmented memories, disjointed images of greed-fueled battles, the love that had frayed, and moments of haunting loss. Then the floorboards beneath me groaned, shifting almost imperceptibly, a threat lurking just below the surface. The walls seemed to pulsate, echoing with the cries of my family as they writhed in their eternal suffering. "You won't leave us." Their wretched cries merged into a single, blood-curdling roar that clawed at the sanity I barely clung to. A shiver of ice raced down my spine as I saw a flicker of movement skirting the edge of my vision. My heart raced, and my instincts screamed for me to flee, but my feet remained frozen, a cruel twist of fate. Emerging from the suffocating shadows, a tall shape stood before me, cloaked in flickering void. A figure wreathed in darkness, but its eyes, oh God, its eyes burned with a chilling light that pierced through the night. "Have you come to embrace your legacy?" It crooned, the voice a perfect blend of seduction and despair. I staggered backward, my heart pounding violently against my ribcage. "Your family's legacy, the reward you seek, lies in the pain, in the suffering yet to come." Whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, echoing fragments of past grievances, the terrible secrets buried deep within the heart of our lineage. Reluctantly, I began to piece together fragments of memories. The night my father vanished without a trace, the last quarrel over the inheritance that tore my family apart. The more I recalled, the tighter the shadows clung around me. "Your blood is the anchor," the figure continued, inching closer, its skin glistening like obsidian. "To free them, you must embrace their hunger, their loss. Only then can you escape this cycle." From the depths of the shadows, I heard a voice I hadn't recognized until now, twisted and contorted but unmistakably my own. "Join me, we can always be together, in darkness. You just need to let go." I teetered on the brink of terror and intrigue, torn between the suffocating dark and the lingering pull of the ghostly promise that seeped from my own lips. In my mind, visions whirled to life, me family, smiling softly before turning to ash. "Join them, join us," the echoes thrummed gently, caressing me with a sickening urgency. Just as the shadows started to pull tighter around me, I heard a distant, melodic hum threading through the chaos, dragging me back to a time long forgotten, before the darkness had claimed my family. It whispered of a time when laughter echoed through sunlit hallways, promising warmth and love. "Escape now," the voice commanded, loud and unyielding. With urgency, I pushed my feet to sprint, yet as I turned, the floor gave way beneath me. I felt the ground at my back vanish, plunging me deeper into a void that swallowed my screams whole. As I fell, I caught one last fleeting glimpse, the figure, the laughter, the writhing shadows all surging toward me, fingers clawing through the dark to reach out, pulling me towards something unfathomable. Just before I hit the ground below, a deafening roar erupted, breaking the veil of darkness, a sound reminiscent of my family, mingled with the rage of something far more sinister. Then, silence, pregnant with dread. I landed on an earthen floor, one startled gasp slipping past my lips, greeted with a paralyzing chill that slithered down my spine. I was not alone. The air was dense with the bittersweet aroma of decay, every breath tainted by unseen forces. And as I gathered myself, realizing the walls were now lined with familiar portraits, me family gazing down with a sorrowful hunger. "Welcome home," the dissonant murmurs circled around me as I turned, my pulse racing dangerously. It was never meant to be an escape. And in that chilling moment, unable to move but feeling the malevolent gaze of my family's portraits digging into me, I realized the truth would soon be revealed. With dread deep in my gut, I whispered, "What do you want from me?" But before I could process the answer, a dark figure emerged from the shadows behind the portraits, its face cloaked once again in the same consuming darkness, whispering a single word that carried the weight of devastating promise: "Everything." A chill seized my heart as I froze, unable to blink, as the shadows shifted, expanding to consume all light, pushing me further into a nightmare that had taken a very personal turn, no longer just my family's curse, but now, irrevocably, my own. The air grew heavier, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. The whispers intensified, their ancient language echoing the screams of anguish trapped within the canvas of my family's portraits. Each frame seemed alive, eyes flickering as if the painted figures were desperately trying to escape through the ink. My heart thudded against my chest, a frantic drum calling me to flee, yet every instinct told me there was nowhere left to run. Embrace your heritage, the shadow murmured, stepping closer, its form indistinguishable from the darkness itself. I could feel an angry silence settle, thick and tight, as if the world around us was holding its breath. You possess the key to this affliction. All we need is your will. What will? The certainty of terror turned questions into chains, binding me to the very ground I stood upon. I was a prisoner, ensnared not just by my family's past but ensconced in the fabric of this cursed legacy. The thought reverberated like a scream in my mind. No, I whispered, desperation clawing at my throat, but the entity laughed, a sound that reverberated with centuries of bitterness. Your denial will only extend your suffering. They hunger for your strength, your spirit. You cannot escape what you truly are. In a horrific revelation, the laughter morphed into a cacophony of overlapping voices. My grandfather's low rumble merged with my mother's pained cries, drowning me in memories I wished to forget. We are waiting for you, they chorused. Find us within this darkness. A sudden chill swept through the room as one portrait shifted slightly, tilting forward as though it were being pulled by a string. My grandmother, once a vibrant matriarch, now a ghastly parody of her former self, waved with a skeletal hand, mouth twisting into a grotesque smile. We are nearer than ever, she croaked, emptied and aching. All we require is your resonance. I staggered back, the edges of my vision darkening as the figures seemed to become more dynamically horrific. Their bodies flickered in and out, showing glimpses of their lives, moments of joy disintegrating beneath the weight of greed, their faces slowly melting into masks of suffering. Pain clawed at my insides, yearning to scream for them to stop, to help them. A terrifying duality seized me, the confusion of love and dread intertwining. Stop! I cried, instinctively distancing myself from the portraits. That won't help you, the shadow said, its presence becoming bolder. Their fate is now yours. To find freedom, you must endure their thirst for more. More of what? My mind raced, the oppressive air swirling with dread. I sought clarity while the shadows encroached, weaving tendrils of despair around my limbs. With each breath, the room felt smaller, the light retreating as the figures in the portrait stretched towards me like gnarled branches, desperate for sustenance. It was a family reunion from hell. Then, with terrifying speed, the figure lunged. In an instant, the entity was upon me, its voice a seductive whisper. You wish for answers, do you not? You'll find them beneath the earth where the dead whisper their secrets. Before I could react, it grasped my wrist, its icy fingers burrowing into my skin. I gasped at the sudden jolt of pain, a cries echoing in my mind, a chorus of anguish that shook the walls. As I felt myself being pulled, the edges of the world began to slip away, each sound and sight blurring into chaos. Suddenly, I was falling again, but this time it felt different, down into a pit dark enough to absorb every inch of light and hope. I clawed at the air, visions of my family flipping and transforming, faces morphing into snarling beasts, all a reflection of my own fears. The laughter returned, twisting into shrieks of agony. Just as abruptly, I landed on cold, damp earth, the air heavy with moisture. I lay there, disoriented, surrounded by an undercurrent of despair that sent tremors through my body. Around me, the faint outlines of gravestones emerged from the shadows. Here lay the remnants of my family, buried in more than just flesh. A pulse of energy surged through the ground, resonating with an ancient malevolence. Welcome to the heart of despair, the shadow proclaimed, towering over me like a monstrous silhouette. You are in the cradle of your family's curse. Here, they await your offering. An overwhelming wave of dread swept over me, and I stumbled back, coming face to face with a statue of my father, the last remnants of his noble visage marred by an eternal grimace. His eyes burned bright, a connection bridging the unearthly silence. My father. My blood. And before I could come to terms with this revelation, his mouth, the stone mouth, opened wide, whispering in a voice that sent ice racing through my veins. "It's time for you to feed us." The murky ground began to bubble, and as it erupted, a surge of ghastly hands clawed up from beneath, reaching for me, pulling me toward the depths of unimaginable horror. My screams became swallowed by the dark, a cacophony of lost souls eager for what I dared not offer, and as I felt myself slipping into the grasp of the darkness, I caught the last whisper of my own voice, softly echoing perilously close to fate. "What have I done?" It was a question now wrapped in terror, caught between love and despair, and all I could do was descend further into an unfathomable abyss, consumed by the darkness that craved everything I was. The ground beneath me pulsed with a hunger that matched the desperation in my chest. Each grasp of the cold, skeletal hands that emerged from that hellish earth only deepened my terror, their gnarled fingers imbued with a life of their own. They pulled me lower into the darkness, a suffocating grip that felt both alluring and deadly. Whispers enveloped me, hovering like moths drawn to a flame, a haunting symphony of the forgotten, begging for salvation yet revealing only devastation. "Feed us," my father's statue implored again, his stony voice echoing in the void. "It's what we deserve. History must be honored, and ours demands your tribute. What do you want from me?" I screamed into the oppressive air, my voice shaking with the discord of my helplessness. "I won't be part of this. I refuse." The frantic resistance surged through me, igniting a flicker of strength. Yet, the grasping hands only tightened, relentless as they dragged me deeper into the underworld of my family's sordid history. Despair flashed in my mind, manifesting as images of my relatives buried in neglect and blame, their ethereal forms flitting just beyond reach, tormenting me with their silent pleas. My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm drowning out any rational thought. I closed my eyes, pleading with the universe for reprieve, for a chance to break free from this cursed inheritance. When I opened them again, I was no longer bound by the thick tendrils of hopelessness but stood in the center of a forgotten graveyard, the earth flat beneath my feet. Mist curled lazily around the cracked gravestones, each one a representation of a family member I barely recognized, their names etched in time, forgotten by those who should remember them. As the shadows coalesced, forming into definite silhouettes, each figure emerged with a wretched semblance of my family. They wore expressions of grief and anger, eyes void of light and filled with the echoes of decades lost. My grandmother, her once kind smile twisted into a grimace, stepped toward me, hands outstretched, beckoning. "You must understand," she rasped. "We linger, yearning for what is owed. You have the gift, it lies within you." The weight of their longing crushed me, igniting an ember of anguish deep in my core. I shook my head, gasping for clarity amid the swirling storm of emotions. "I can't help you. I'm not like you," but that only seemed to fuel the entity's power. "And yet, you are," it hissed, its darkness pulsating with a sinister intent. "You think you may resist, but the blood of our lineage courses through your veins, binding you to our fate." A painful realization consumed me. Each face of those lost souls mirrored my own struggle, their torment a reflection of my fears, my unaddressed guilt absorbing me into their shared agony. I felt their desperation coiling around me, a noose tightening as a chilling truth revealed itself. I needed to learn, to confront what this legacy truly was, or I would be engulfed by it. "Join us," my father demanded, his statue now a flesh and blood apparition, a phantom of what I had loved. "Your will is powerful. You can alter our fate." I grasped the soil beneath me, raking it in a futile attempt to escape, a reflex born of panic. Yet, buried beneath the loamy earth, secrets pulsed like a heartbeat, thumping against the walls of my mind, luring me to delve deeper into the dark. "Take the offering," a chorus of shrieks moaned as the hands beneath surged again, more frantic now, grasping at my clothes, my limbs, pulling me toward their insatiable hunger. "What offering?" I screamed silently, dread coursing through my veins, squeezing my throat tighter. But then I realized the answer was buried in the recess of my own memories, in the shadows of past conversations with my family. The tales of greed that had seeped into our legacy, the sacrifices we had made for one another. Could it be that they wanted me to relinquish my spirit? And then I saw it, a small, glistening knife just beyond my reach, half embedded in a piece of crumbling tombstone. Use it, the specters urged, their pleas woven with a desperate urgency that twisted my gut. Their voices blended into a cacophony that became deafening, echoing through my mind. It's the only way to save us, a piece of you for the key to our freedom. Somewhere in the chaos, the truth laid bare like an open wound. The blade symbolized sacrifice not just for them, but also for me. My heart struck an agonizing chord of resistance and guilt, as I fought against the enticing pull of their calls. Yet even as I grappled with that horrifying choice, the world around me began to waver, shadows flickering as the ground threatened to collapse beneath my feet. All at once, a fearsome howl erupted from the depths of the earth, a sound raw and primal, calling forth the restless spirits who craved release. Ground tremors roared like a beast awakened, gravel and stones tumbling as I stood, teetering on the brink of surrender. Then, just as I grasped the weight of the weapon, the fabric of reality shifted. A blinding light pierced the shadows, illuminating a grotesque figure emerging from the void, a creature more horrifying than any specter I faced. It screeched, its eyes ablaze with malicious intent, towering over me as I stood frozen, knife in hand. "You dare claim your birthright?" It shrieked, a voice threaded with an odd familiarity that felt like a siren song woven into the threads of fate, and in that moment, beneath the weight of ancestral burdens and the depth of my own terror, I realized I was no longer fighting for my family's legacy. Instead, I faced a reckoning of my own soul, a crossroads where fate, family, and fear collided. As the air thickened with torment and uncertainty, the haunting words of my ancestors echoed louder in my mind. And as the abyss opened wider, I confronted the unimaginable choice before me, with the terrifying truth looming overhead: what if their freedom meant my own utter doom? The world around me seemed to blur as the figure advanced, its features shifting like smoke, distorting between its monstrous form and a long-hidden visage. I grappled with the knife, my heart hammering as revelations surged through me like shards of ice. It was there, lurking in the corridors of memory, another face, one ID long buried, a distant ancestor, my great-great-grandfather, renowned for his treacherous bargains. He had traded away more than wealth, he had offered blood for prosperity, kindling a curse that had become our family's legacy. "Please," I pleaded, the words slipping out as threads of dread coiled tighter in my chest. "What are you?" the creature cackled, a sound like fingernails scratching across glass. "I am the harvest of your ancestors' greed and desire, the price you cannot escape. Are you ready to claim your destiny, child of the damned?" The shadows thickened, swirling around us like a tempest. I felt the clutches of the ethereal hands, their grip transforming from desperation to anticipation, as if they sensed the throbbing pulse of a decision teetering upon my lips. My pulse quickened, each heartbeat an echo of the ancestral sins that thrummed through my veins. "Do you not feel it?" the creature taunted, now hovering mere inches from me, its breath cooling the air into a chilling mist. "The power unbound? You can carry forth our will, you can claim ownership of the fate that awaits. But the cost," it smirked, revealing jagged teeth that glinted with malice. "The cost, my dear, is your essence." That I squeezed the hilt of the knife, feeling its coldness seep into my skin, an anchor between my fear and the terrible desire growing within. The whispers of my family surged, strident now, urging me forward. Sacrifice. Surrender. Feed us. Beneath the cacophony of their demands, a different voice intruded, soft yet piercing: "You can break free, you're more than their nightmare." It was a distant echo, reminiscent of something pure, me mother's lullaby, a reminder of a kinder past before our lineage was weighed down by shadows. I could almost see her in the periphery of my consciousness, her eyes filled with hope amid the despair, but the abomination lingered, laughing, mocking. "Hope? How quaint! You think you can escape your legacy?" Before I could respond, the ground heaved violently, graves cracked open as despairing figures clawed their way to the surface, their faces twisted in anguish, almost pleading. I stumbled back, aware that the knife's edge shimmered in the dim light, ripe for the taking. "No! I won't be part of this, join us!" they chanted, the air thick with their feverish hunger. Each syllable ignited a deep-seated fear within me, an overwhelming dread of unveiling the final chapter of our family's dark history. If sensing my hesitation, the creature grew stronger, a grotesque visage shifting to something far too familiar. Can't you see? Your bloodline's greed has bound you here. It transformed, the shadows warping into the haunting face of my grandfather, his eyes hollow yet aflame with desperation, transcending the barrier between predator and prey. Relinquish a piece of yourself and find comfort in being our vessel. That I staggered, attempting to merge the phantoms of familial love with the gruesome legacy that demanded retribution. Each spirit called to me, a chorus steeped in sadness, hopes lost, dreams shattered, all waiting for freedom, all hungry for the price of my soul. I felt the ground tremble again, as if it too was caught in the grip of doubt. No! I shouted, the scream erupting from my mouth, a battle cry against overwhelming sadness. I refuse. You don't own me, but my vision flickered, the knife beckoning seductively amidst the chaos. The creature's laughter broke through the haze, reducing me to helplessness. A brave declaration, yet empty of substance. Choose wisely, for time ticks inexorably forward. It gestured to the swirling shadow, and I saw my family, hundreds of faces, written in the bleak history of abandonment, their forms merging into a single mass, a desperate plea for recognition, and then a thought surged, a chilling realization. What if the sacrifice they sought from me was not just my essence but a darker truth hidden deeper within? What if, ultimately, my very existence was the key to releasing them, and thus, tying my fate inexorably to their torment? The air grew heavy, thickening with dread, as I understood that my choice was the final thread binding time itself. I raised the blade, trembling not just with fear but with the burden of 1,000 souls. Then, in an instant, darkness surged forth, a howl erupting from the abyss as a rift tore open beneath me, swallowing everything whole. Just when I thought I had found clarity, when I thought salvation was within my grasp, the ground quaked violently beneath my feet, the figures below roared in unison as I was pitched toward the yawning maw of despair, and then I fell, the knife slipping from my grasp, twirling slowly in the air, leaving me exiled from choice and hope, a scream escaping as I hurtled into a void guarded by the ghosts of my family. That scream rang out, echoing against the walls of fate, until all was met with darkness, and I realized, in chilling clarity, that perhaps I was never the one to choose at all. The abyss wrapped around me like a shroud, a cold embrace that dulled my senses and muffled the frantic cacophony of history racing above. In the void, there was a disquieting stillness, darker than the shadowy figures clawing their way up from the cursed earth, their faces a mask of insatiable hunger. I felt weightless, suspended in a realm that smelled of decay and ancient secrets. Memories flickered before me, fragments from generations past engulfed in greed and anguish, each moment gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. That I whipped around, searching for a sign of reprieve, but all that met my gaze were echoes of despair, leering faces contorted with primal fear, their mouths moving in a wordless chant that reverberated through the fabric of my being. Join us. Feed us. They implored, their hands reaching out, clawing for the remnant of my spirit they believed belonged to them. Desperation clawed at my throat as I struggled to remember my mother's lullaby. Her sweet voice had always served as a protective barrier against the darkness. But as I hovered in this nightmarish dimension, her melody faded, supplanted by the mournful cries of my ancestors, the crushing reality of their curse looming over me. Suddenly, the ground beneath me quaked violently, jarring me from the depths of my fear-laden thoughts. Wisps of light appeared, flickering like dying stars, and within them, the forms of my family emerged. They were wrapped in shadows, their features indistinct, yet the sorrow radiating from them was tangible. Do not deny us, child of our blood. They cried in unison, their voices tearing through the silence like shards of glass. Your sacrifice is our salvation. The grotesque caricature of my grandfather materialized again, his visage twisting into a ghastly leer, pulling closer to my face as he spat out the words. Defiance is futile. Embrace it. Your destiny beckons. That word destiny struck a chord deep within me, resonating alongside the terror swirling around. I was trapped between the weight of a ghastly legacy and the flickering embers of my own will. Each whisper, each haunting face, urged me closer to the precipice of surrender. The choice hung like a noose, taut and suffocating, threatening to snuff out any flicker of resolve that remained. what was the true cost of freedom? I felt as though I teetered on a knife's edge, the environment shifting around me like a sentient entity, ready to consume what solace was left in my heart. The surrounding darkness swelled, a living entity where shadows pulsated and writhed, as if the past was attempting to found a crueler form of life. Ethereal laughter echoed through the void, mocking me, taunting me to relent. Before I could collect my thoughts, a sudden surge pulsated through the air. The blade that had slipped from my grasp was now hovering mere inches before me, glinting like a beacon, shimmering with the promise of power. As a strange compulsion washed over me, I reached out instinctively, fingertips grazing the cool metal. In that moment, a torrent of visions bombarded my mind, the harrowing sights of my great-great-grandfather's fateful decisions, the hapless pleas of those that came before me, all intertwined within a narrative woven from desperation and the hunger for survival. The sacrifice that had bound them, was it real? Or was it merely an illusion crafted to keep me shackled to this torment? The shadows reared against my senses, pressing in tighter, urging me to believe, to surrender the last remnants of my will. I could feel their breath, cold and clammy against my skin, as they whispered promises of eternal power and a wicked heart's desire. It felt intoxicating, a siren's song luring me into deeper darkness, but it was there, amidst the chaos, that my mother's voice flickered back into clarity. You are not them. You have the strength to fight. Her whisper, now resonating louder than despair, sparked a glimmer of hope amid the surrounding void. Could I truly break this generation's old curse? With renewed vigor, I grasped the knife, carving through the shadows that held me, sending ripples of light cascading from the edge. The anguished wails of my family crescendoed, echoing in the darkness. No! You cannot escape. Their voices merged into an unholy symphony of rage and despair. The very fabric of this realm trembled, and the visions grew frantic. In their chaos, a revelation blinked into existence. Maybe it was my choice that would shatter the chains binding them, or perhaps the curse would use me to tighten them further. Yet even as the possibilities danced around me, the shadows surged with renewed strength, engulfing me. Beneath my feet, the ground warped, tearing as the faces of my ancestors twisted with rage and sorrow. Then, as if reacting to my wavering resolve, a blinding light exploded above me, illuminating the darkness for the briefest of moments, silhouetting the monstrous forms that encircled me. I felt myself falling in a spiraling descent that plummeted into the depths of despair, as the laughter turned into a ferocious howl of tumult, and just as the light grew blinding, the chaos swirled around me, a whirlpool of chaos clenching tight. Then, in an instant, it collapsed. Where was I? I opened my eyes to the fading echoes of the night, wild whispers brushing against my skin like icy fingers. I was back in the forest, but something deeper thrummed between the trees as they loomed over me like watchful sentinels. Unease prickled my skin, as if the very air had thickened with the sins of my ancestors. And then, in the silence that followed, a voice echoed in my mind, cold as the grave and just as suffocating. You cannot escape your blood. The ground trembled beneath me, leaving no question of what was to come. The shadows surged back, an avalanche of despair and fury arising from the earth, eager to reclaim what had been lost. The world around me twisted, the terrifying truth settling in. The cursed legacy was waiting for me to fall once more. I stood on the precipice of terror, grasping the knife with trembling hands. Darkness swirled around me, thick and suffocating, whispering promises that promised not freedom but eternal servitude to a fate crafted by my ancestors. The faces of my family surged before me, with hollow eyes beseeching, their mouths frozen in silent screams that twisted my heart into knots of anguish. I could almost hear their voices, a cacophony of sorrow, dripping with regret and desperation. Join us, they echoed, their voices harmonizing into an eerie symphony. Claim what is yours. But what was mine? This curse, or the promise of power buried deep in the familial bones? The shadows coiled at my feet, hungry for what I was about to claim. I had come to learn the truth, but the door I had crossed gaped wide, a mouth of darkness that threatened to consume me whole. In that moment of indecision, I could feel the darkness creeping closer, wrapping around me like a shroud, as if eager to devour my last sliver of hope. The knife felt heavy in my grip, the cold metal a reminder of the bloodied history that had led me here. Instinct urged me to strike, to sever the ties binding my fate to this monstrous legacy. Taking a breath, I stepped towards my family's portraits, feeling the warmth of despair tempting me to surrender. "No!" I cried out, tossing the knife to the ground. "I will not become what you are." And with that declaration ricocheting through the shadows, something shifted in the atmosphere. The stillness morphed into a resonating silence, a hush dragging along the edges of sanity, but the moment was fleeting. The air thickened with a palpable malice, the walls of reality fracturing around me. Emotions that had been dormant, those of fear and anguish, surged forth like the tide breaking against a crumbling shore. I staggered back, the memory of my mother's lullaby echoing in my mind, a fleeting reminder of love buried in grief. "You don't own me!" I shouted, as the shadows surged, eager for my surrender, but just then, a figure emerged from the void, a figure consumed by darkness yet intimately familiar. A smoldering light flickered in its depths, it hurt to look at. It was my mother, a grotesque reflection of the woman I had loved, her eyes vacant, her smile twisted into something sinister. "I've waited for you to learn," she rasped, her voice spinning a web of torment. "The truth will always reveal itself, even through despair. All of this, it led to you." My heart sank. I had sought answers, thinking the family curse was something I could untangle, but this was deeper and darker than any tale of greed or sacrifice. I was part of it, woven into the very fabric of the evil that had claimed my family, my essence strewn across generations. Suddenly, the anguish flickered in her eyes, revealing her memories, their texture rich with emotions just as potent as the horror I faced now. "Your blood is the key," she said, her voice a seductive whisper. "Your strength could free you or bind you forever. Will you stand against the legacy?" The shadows surged forward, sweeping towards me like a tidal wave, a writhing mass of hunger and desperation, each tendril snaking closer to draw me in. "Join us!" They screamed in unison, a deafening chorus suspiciously similar to my own desperate thoughts. It was a call to the darkest corners of my psyche, echoing desires I dared not acknowledge. With no trace of encouragement, I fought against the despair that tried to choke the breath from my lungs. "You're lying!" I shouted, feeling the weight of their gaze, my resolve cracking under the strain. I stumbled backward, pinwheeling into the surrounding darkness, but it coiled tighter, digging into my skin as if eager to erase my very existence. That's when I found it. Just out of reach, dark and stained, was the knife, glinting against the shadows, its shiny blade reflecting fragments of my family, faces locked in a grimace of longing. I reached for it, heart pounding violently, almost willing to leave behind the light, the joy that flickered coldly in my memory. "Claim your birthright, embrace your destiny." The words dripped from my mother's lips like poison. The shadows harmonized with her plea, a chilling requiem for the damned. "You are the culmination of our pain." That I hesitated, but within that flicker of doubt, I understood. I was part of this cycle of despair, bound by blood and haunted by desire. Something dark surged in the corners of my mind, an unspeakable void stretched before me, a reflection not just of my family's history but of my own inner demons. And then, amidst the echoes of my ancestors, a voice surged forward, overpowering the wails of the spirits surrounding me. A memory so long buried, my father's face beaming with warmth, the reminder of who we used to be beyond the darkness. "You had courage, you can break free, no more!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. I grasped the knife, feeling its weight represent my pain and the strength of my resolve. "I am more than this cursed legacy." With that, I plunged the knife into my palm, pain blooming like a rose, hot and real, driving the blood from my veins. "For the choice I make is mine." The warmth cascaded down, carving a path through the shadows, illuminating the devastation behind them. The wails of despair surged, a tidal wave that crashed against my resolve, but I pressed forward. I could see my family's agony twist in the light, their cries transformed from calls of despair to something else entirely, anguish melding into understanding, yearning for forgiveness, and then everything shattered. A blinding light erupted, scattering shadows like ashes into the air. I felt the chains break, the ghosts of my family dissipating into the light, their hollow despair vanishing like fog amidst the sun. But as the darkness retreated, a ripple of dread surged within the fabric of my reality. The very earth trembled beneath me, and as the screams faded, I realized what it meant. I hadn't broken the curse, I had simply bound it to me. The vortex whispered sweet promises of vengeance, of despair, of darkness. The curse still lingered, a shackle now forged onto my own spirit. Your blood is the key, the shadows breathed, and I felt its power cradled in my veins. The darkness had been waiting, watching me, and as much as I wanted to defy it, I could feel its horrid tendrils wrapping tighter around my heart. And so now, I am the keeper of an eternal punishment. I face the horror not just of my family's legacy but the weight of despair clawing at my soul as I become the vessel that binds their wishful haunt. As I stand trembling in this cursed space I now find myself in, surrounded by the echoing laughter of shadows, I understand what it means to be adored, and Lothetto know that they linger still. For I am not free, I am intertwined in an everlasting darkness. And in the silence that follows, I left a chilling echo. What I sought to escape, I have only ensnared anew.